And the news has broken, Matt. The news has broken. We have waited almost 2 weeks, just under 2 weeks, and what has seemed like a roller coaster, what has been a roller coaster of emotions in this hiring process. It has finally been announced officially via the Indiana men's basketball Twitter page that Mike Woodson is going to be the 30th men's basketball head coach. I want to kick it over to you first just to kind of talk about our initial thoughts because it is super fresh, just like the Archie podcast. We went on right away, got those initial thoughts. So opening thoughts, Matt, what have you thought or are thinking or have been going through your emotions over this hire of our new head basketball coach for the men's program?
Yeah, I mean, initially I was like, well, I'm glad we're a football school. I was very underwhelmed, to say the least. I've been in the camp where I've been hoping that we go and hire a Power 5 coach and, say, you know what, past is the past, and we'll keep it in the past. And it's great that we have that past, but it's time to move on. And this is like the direct opposite of that. We're hiring a former Knight player. He was back for the reunion with Knight. He was apparently a key role in that. He was a name that came up 4 years ago when we were talking about the coaching search. I remember there was a rumor about maybe him coming back with Mike Brown, former Pistons head coach, and everybody was like, what? That wouldn't work. And so now here we are 4 years later, and he's the coach. And I was like, But then they added the portion about Thad Matta, and I was like, you know what? And the more I've read about it, I've been like, you know what? I like this. I actually genuinely think it's – I saw Martha the Mop Lady tweet something that it's so genuinely stupid that it might be genius. And I actually agree. I think it's so dumb that it might work. And so a lot of the – it's the whole going back to your roots thing that's happening in college basketball right now. You have Michigan going back to Juwan Howard. You have Penny Hardaway going to Memphis. Like, these guys have shown it work. Memphis just won the NIT. Michigan's about to be in the Elite Eight if they pull through, and they look like they're playing very well against FSU right now. It's working out. So there's a place where this works out. And then I was like, you know what, Mike Woodson, he's an NBA guy. He's got connections. That's cool, whatever. But then the more I've read into the connections he's had, and the more I'm like, oh, he was a coach on that team. Oh, he worked for that coach. Oh, he coached that Knicks team? I go, wait a second. He
coached those players too.
Yeah, those players too. The more I learn about this, the more I like it, which is the perfect kind of hire. Because at first I'm like, But now I'm more like, yeah, I can see where this works. Is it risky? Yes, undeniably so. This is extremely risky. But I like the plans and the steps they've already taken. Putting Thad Matta in charge of the basketball program is great. He's going to be hands-on. He gets to do whatever he feels like he's responsible for. Will help Mike Woodson with probably lots of planning. I've seen people say that he's going to help with recruiting. He can't. He literally can't recruit unless he's on the coaching staff. Otherwise, that's an NCAA violation. So he will not be on the recruiting trail, which is great because apparently the part that was really hurting Matta was the traveling. He couldn't travel. So he doesn't have to travel anymore. Just chill out in Bloomington. Who doesn't love Bloomington? And go to Knicks and have a beer after he's done with work and not have to worry about going to Bloomington's airport and jumping on a jet and going to Massachusetts for an AU tournament. He doesn't have to do that. It's great. It's a perfect world for him. He gets that coaching tickle scratched. He gets to be in practices. He gets to sit in meetings and game plan design and whatever, and he doesn't have to worry about recruiting. And then when Woodson and the rest of the staff is out recruiting, they have somebody who's a former college and Final Four leading head coach to be there and run practices and help out with the everyday stuff and work on player development with the players. It makes a lot of sense. I really like this hire, Noah. What are your thoughts?
I mean, There's probably going to be a lot of speechless. It's probably going to be a quote unquote bad podcast from the two of us. First of all, the in-laws got in town last night, just as the Indiana women's basketball team was actually finishing their game. So I haven't even really been in with anything, just because they drove all the way from Indiana to come over here. The first reaction I had, because I was hanging out, was I just saw one of those ESPN things. I was like 30 minutes late to the party almost when some of this information was coming out. I saw like it is imminent that Mike Woodson will be hired as the head coach, and immediately, kind of like what you said, I think we had similar reactions. This was like there were like a few candidates that I think collectively Hoosier fans were kind of like, I really don't know, I really don't like. It was kind of Brad Stevens, a whole bunch of people in the middle, and then a couple of those like C team, D team, E team type of players or coaches that you would have thought there. And he was one of them until you start to read into some of those news reports or news tweets, I guess, that were coming out, and that Thad Matta was coming in. And I tweeted this on its own. It's like Mike Woodson on its own was a meh. Thad Matta was like, nice, like that's a pretty good hire. But now you get both of them, and that's essentially what Scott Dolson is doing right now, getting both of them. And I quickly started to get super excited and turn my entire thinking around to being like, hey, just like you said, this is super risky. Everything is going to be prefaced. This is super risky. I don't know if I'm comfortable with that. I almost rather, hey, John Beilein be that safe hire, but I don't know, man. This could potentially work. You got that NBA side right now. You're seeing with Juwan Howard just working perfectly, flawlessly right now with the way he's taken over that program. You get that type of side into it, and you talked about all of those extra things with Matta. All of the downsides of him are now taken away with being the associate general manager of the men's basketball program. That's a long title. But yeah, he gets to come in, and Mike Woodson's down. Like basically the downsides of each person, if you were to have them individually, are the strong suits of the other person. You've got Mike Woodson, who has not had any college basketball head coaching experience or head coaching experience, hasn't been able to recruit, all of those kinds of things. It's just dumbed down this list a little bit. Thad Matta, same kind of thing. Those health issues, hasn't been into the job, coaching, that type of thing in a while.
Yep.
Thad Matta doesn't have to really coach, but he can give Mike Woodson all of those head coaching experiences and all of it that goes with it, and he can help him that way. Same kind of thing the other way around, just like what you mentioned. Thad Matta doesn't have to go recruit. He doesn't have to be with the team 100% of the time because of those health issues. And like you said, scratch that itch. And the more and more that these two can hopefully play off of each other, the better it could potentially be. And it also kind of goes along with what Scott Dolson was saying in his press conference about what he was looking for with the new basketball coach. And as time went on, everyone was just maybe we should have just taken everything Scott Dolson said with a grain of salt. Like he was saying all these things like a CEO of basketball, and let's modernize basketball, and let's do all these things that we all got excited about because we're going to think about the new direction of the program. And then as time went on, and of course it's like, there were no leaks happening. Scott Dolson did this super well. No leaks happened. So obviously fans had to get crazy about it. And we're like, maybe he's not, like, maybe he doesn't know what he's doing. I don't know. And then all of his stuff is starting to come true. The vision he had is starting to appear in front of our eyes with the CEO that he was looking for that could work with him. That's Thad Matta for you. That's him being able to oversee a lot of the program, even though he's the associate general manager of the head basketball program. But he can oversee a lot of the stuff. He can get some of those minute details that maybe Mike Woodson, an Indiana guy that might not have the best experience with, can get off of his feet and get into the program. And if there was one candidate out of everyone, Brad Stevens included, that a team rallies around and listens to and just really buys into what he has to say, from everything that you've read on Twitter for people that have known him and have known all of the other candidates, he is the best guy to basically get your team to buy into and listen to what he's going to say, which I think that's going to help so much more, because we're going to talk about a minute with kind of like obviously all of those transfer portal players that are currently on the team. It's like, hey, can we bring them back in? How can we do this? And that's the first step. And I think that Mike Woodson is the kind of guy that's like, hey, come on back, man. We can do this together. We're all going to make this happen as a team, and let's get going with this. So let's kind of jump into what we might see with, and of course, like everyone thought Archie Miller was a slam dunk hire, home run hire, all of that kind of stuff. So again, we're going to preface all of this by like, no one knows. This could be a horrible disaster, and Scott Dolson's career as the athletic director of Indiana University could go down the drain, but it could also be just a slam dunk hire, a home run hire. We don't know yet. I think that's what everyone kind of learned as fans with Archie, is that sometimes the resume and the paper doesn't always translate, especially some like you see Holtman. Like Archie was by far the best hire over Holtman at the time. And now you see things that have changed. So prefacing that, like we have no idea. Where are you looking at with this Mike Woodson hire, Matt? How are you seeing with the basketball X's and O's getting those W's, the stuff that we've been looking for? What do you see in him, and how can he kind of revitalize and rechange this program back to the way Hoosier fans are looking for?
Well, he's an NBA mind. He's been in the NBA for like 20 years now. Like even longer than that, because he played the NBA. So, he's been in and around the professional game for basically most of his life, which is really good because, remember, we were talking about revolutionizing IU. We're just playing two post players, right? And dribble handoffs. Like, that doesn't happen in the NBA anymore. They haven't been calling plays like that in the NBA for at least 15 years. Like, that's how far behind we are from the top level of basketball currently under Archie Miller. And now, under Mike Woodson, we're going to get a little bit of that flair. We're going to be running a lot more pick and roll. We're going to be running a lot more man-to-man defense. He's not going to be playing the pack line defense like we were playing. It's going to be interesting to see some of the changes that he brings in as well. Are we going to bring in a lot of what Thad Matta did at Ohio State? Remember, those teams with Mike Conley and Greg Oden were fun to watch. I even remember the Evan Turner years at Ohio State. They were fun teams to watch. They played a fun brand of basketball. Are they going to combine their brain power maybe and work on a team like that? Who knows? I'm really looking forward to see what the staff is, because remember, Thad Matta is not on the staff. I'll repeat it again. He's not on the staff. He's an assistant athletic director. So he oversees the program. He's not an assistant coach. So he'll probably be working with the basketball team, but he's not going to be on the recruiting trail. What Mike Woodson needs is a bunch of hard, heavy-hitting assistants that are going to be recruit crazy, because they're going to need help with that. Again, he's a 63-year-old, never coached in college. I can see why you guys would be skeptical, right? If you're listening to this podcast and go, I don't know about the coaching hire. I understand that. Look, you can be pessimistic all you want. Like, that it's warranted in this situation. Like, he's a 63-year-old, has no coaching experience, and he's a night guy. And we had a former night assistant before, and Mike Davis. That didn't work out, right? So now we're sitting here like, is this going to work out? And we're in a very soft spot. We need this to work out. I don't think I need to explain that to you guys. You guys know that. So I personally think it's going to work out. I think they'll find the correct assistant coaches. I was listening and reading up on a bunch of stuff about this hire earlier. I think the program wanted a more hands-on approach with the assistants this time. I know Archie got to pick his last time. I think this time they're going to help, Coach Woodson with the search and connections. And you know who else is going to help with that? Thad Matta, who has a bunch of really good assistant coaches that he used to work with, still working in college. So I'm sure they'll make an excellent staff. And the national basketball media will go from, I know Jeff Goodman just put out a tweet said, Juwan Howard is the outlier. Indiana's hiring of Mike Woodson is far more likely to fail rather than succeed if you just look at the data. Call him.
Well, it's funny actually that someone it was Crimson Corey just dug up when Juwan Howard was hired and he
article.
Yeah, he's like just landed the Michigan job. Let's hope I'm wrong, but history is not on his side. So that just kind of shows you how much he knows about things.
It's crazy to me. I want to say things about Jeff Goodman that should not be said on the podcast because you have to put it 18 and over. I don't like the guy. All right, the last 2 weeks have made me. I hope he never gets a press pass to Assembly Hall again. I don't care that he works for Stadium. I don't even. That company can go under for all I care. Anyways, yeah, no. I mean, I like the hire. I think he'll do well with recruits. Just like the Anatomy of Our Time said, I think he'll be able to relate with players. And look. The thing that spoke most to me, I retweeted it earlier. There was an interview with JJ Redick's podcast. He was interviewing Melo and another player who I can't remember, another NBA player, very famous. And they were talking about some of the play calls that Coach Woodson would run for them. They called him Woody. That Woody would run for him. And they're talking about Sweet Georgia Brown was an inbounds play that worked almost every single time. And they were just laughing about it because of that they love him so much. And that speaks more than anything we could ever say on this podcast. Everywhere he goes, the players love him. He is a player's coach. Now, to some of you, that might sound like I cursed, right? Like, player's coach, he's supposed to be tough. He's supposed to be, the tough love, strong man. Yeah, there's a place for that. But there's also, players like playing for player coaches. Surprise. Like, Doc Rivers is a player's coach. Won an NBA championship with the Celtics. Like, they work. And you know what we really need now is a coach that really galvanizes the players. I don't know how long it's been since I've seen our players have fun on the basketball court. It's been a while. I think since Archie's been the coach, I don't remember the players actually looking like they had fun. I mean, outside of like the random Marquette game. Other than that, I haven't seen them have a ton of fun in an IU basketball uniform. And with Coach Woodson, that's going to be a thing again. He's going to make sure that they have fun. And that is actually a key to winning. You have fun while you're winning, but it's easier to win when you're having fun. And it they piggyback off each other, right? Like you play games, you play card games, whatever. It's fun to win. Right? And we're all competitive. And you're talking about some of the most competitive people in the world. And Coach Woodson's going to help them keep that drive, keep that hunger, keep fighting. I love this hire. I think it's great. The more I think about it, it's just, it's so perfect, Noah.
I know, right? And the Anatomy of Our Time on our chat just said, players in the league love Woodson. And that's, I think, the bottom line that I think most people are going to get excited about with talking about this hire. And again, like you said, and like what I've said, there's a lot of risk and there's a lot of things that could go wrong. But I think kind of Scott Dolson really didn't play it safe, but really tried to make sure that he had a security blanket with hiring Thad Matta to be able to try and move the program in the directions that he is able to and kind of bring it into the future. And that's kind of another thing that Mike Woodson, even before when he was being talked about as a candidate, people were mentioning and talking about because of course, like right now there's a big debate with the Hoosier fans with tradition and modernization, where basically there's a lot of tradition that should be stayed in place because there's a lot of tradition, of course, at IU, blah, blah, blah. But there is a fact that it needs to be modernized because things just haven't been working. And whatever that modernization is, maybe you can combine the mix. And that's kind of what Mike Woodson was being talked about, even when he wasn't being talked about seriously. So this is not even like a bias after the fact, like, I like this now because he is the coach, trying to find things to justify him being hired and really get excited about it. People did talk about he could be the perfect balance of using that old tradition that he knows about because he, of course, played for Bobby Knight and Nick, all that stuff, but also having that NBA modernization, being able to really bring the program on the court itself, the X's and O's and the behind the scenes stuff, bringing all of that into the future, which is what Scott Dolson talked about, and getting them into the future, because that's kind of what we're seeing. All of these teams that are going far in the tournament, they're the ones that are modernizing basketball, the ones that are playing more like the NBA currently. And that's how you see some of these other conferences being successful in the tournament as we sit here literally physically right now. And Michigan being the one exception to the Big Ten. And I would argue that they're probably the closest next to Iowa into kind of getting out of that right now, the style that the Big Ten is playing. But that's another discussion for another time, is where the needs to go for all of that. But a little bit about, I mean, everyone's kind of heard about Mike Woodson. They know who he is, and he has a really long resume in the fact that it's like he hasn't stayed maybe at one place for a long time, for better or for worse, but he's an NBA guy through and through, obviously. And that's kind of where I started to realize the last couple of weeks, I'm like, should we really start going the NBA route? Because, I mean, Juwan Howard is a prime example of that, but I think it'd be interesting to see that with him as a coach. So he played in the league for about a decade or so, kind of bounced around on a couple teams. This is Mike Woodson. As a coach, a few years after he left the league in his playing career, he went to the Bucks as an assistant, then to the Cavaliers and as an assistant, the Sixers, the Pistons. That was about a decade. Just under a decade for being an assistant at a couple schools. Then or a couple of programs. Then he went to the Hawks, and he was the Hawks coach for about 6 years, the head coach of the Hawks. Then he went to the Knicks as the assistant, and then was the head coach. And who is it? The Anatomy of Our Time again talked about, he was the first coach to bring the Knicks back into the playoffs after years of doing that, which he did. Then he went down to the Clippers as the assistant, then back to the Knicks as the assistant, and back to Indiana. So that's kind of where he was. But this is where the recruiting side comes in, and where he can go into rooms. And this is kind of where, like, Matt, you were like, yeah, Thad Matta can't go on the recruiting trail, but it doesn't mean he can't pull Woodson into the room and say, hey, you should go over to this guy's house or this area and be like, this is his room you should walk into. Just Mike Woodson's going to actually do the actual talking. Andy Katz put down, he's like, one of the big selling points is the number of NBA All-Stars Mike Woodson has coached. And this is, get ready for this. These are the people he has coached, not just like talked about and blah, 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 blah. Ray Allen, Kenny Anderson, Carmelo Anthony, Chauncey Billups, Sam Castle, Derek Coleman, Baron Davis, Blake Griffin, Richard Hamilton, Al Horford, Allen Iverson, Joe Johnson, DeAndre Jordan, Sean Kemp, Jason Kidd, Kenyon Martin, Deontay Mutombo, Chris Paul, Paul Pierce, Julius Randle, Glenn Robinson, Derrick Rose, Amari Stoudemire, Anton Walker, Ben Alice, and Rasheed Wallace. Those are just some of the names that he has listed. And if you know even a sliver of the NBA, like you've watched even like a little bit of part of a game, you know that that's an extremely impressive list. And that's like, he's like, hey, you know that time like I coached Allen Iverson or Dikembe or all of these guys, like that's such a key point, especially when we're talking about the present. How is it going to happen right this second, this week? First, we did get from, I think it was John Rothstein that said he was coming. He's actually on his way to Indiana right now to talk to the team. Yeah. It was. John said he's on his way to talk to the team. That's who he's going to talk to. He's going to say, all of those guys that are in the transfer portal, let's come back. And I mean, I would think most IU fans would say, hey, all of those people that put their names in to kind of give them, which we all said was the right thing to do. I think we'd all want most of them back. And then we're going to see some of those other transfer portal people. But where else to keep going on this, Matt? I mean, there's going to be a lot of stuff that we've discussed now. There's going to be a lot of stuff that we're going to discuss. There's going to be a podcast Tuesday, so we can go into this a little more in depth. But do you have some closing thoughts that you've thought with this hire? I know it's also really cool to see like Tom Allen, Indiana guy, see where the program's at. Terry Morin, Indiana gal, see where that program's at. Let's see if Mike Woodson can follow suit.
Yeah, I mean, he was on the 76 team, Mike Woodson, I believe. Yeah, he was a freshman on that 76 team. It's just a lot of history with him, and it's great to have him back in the program. I know I was, before I was on the podcast, I was a tour guide for Assembly Hall and Cook Hall. So some of you watching the podcast might recognize me if you ever come in and try to grab posters or whatever. I was sitting there at the desk. And I remember Mike Woodson coming in one day to Cook Hall, and I was like, that's Mike Woodson. Because, I'm used to seeing his face above me in Cook Hall. They have the Ring of Honor with all the All-Americans that played for IU, and Mike Woodson's one of them. Coming in, and I was like, Coach Woodson, like, what's up? How are you doing? And he was like, hi. And we had like a 3-minute conversation. He asked me where I was from and what I was doing. And he was super nice. Like, I was like, holy crap, I'm talking to an NBA assistant head coach. Can I get a video coordinator position? Please, like, this is awesome. This is great. He was so willing to share time with me. And I think that is almost a key, like a top priority, a key to, one might say, to being a good head coach. And that is just treating people like with respect and dignity, even if you don't know that, they're not like a basketball recruit. Like I'm not a 5-star basketball recruit. Heck, I can barely shoot a free throw. And he spent time talking to me and gave me 3 minutes, and I'll forever be a fan. And, to be fair, I didn't even give him as much of a shot as I should have, given the fact that, he gave the 3 minutes to me before in the coaching search. Because I was like, yeah, I know Mike Woodson, like he's a good third option, whatever. Heck, he's our only option now, right? Like he's hired. And I'm down. Like I'm down with Mike Woodson. I'm going to give it a shot. I think all IU fans need to know one thing, and that is he wants to be here. There's been things that have come out about Archie Miller saying he might not have wanted the job compared to Ohio State. That's BS. You take the Indiana job because you want to be the coach of Indiana, not because you want to have a Big Ten coaching job, not because you want to be a coach of a blue blood, not because you want to have the fame and fortune that comes with success in Indiana. You want to be the coach of Indiana because you want to be a Hoosier. And that's it. It stops there. That's the last thing that should be on your mind. That should be the only thing on your mind when you want to become the head coach of Indiana. And that's what Mike Woodson just said. He said, it's my dream job to John Rothstein. That's all I need to hear. That's all I need to hear. He's our coach. Let's go. Let's get all the guys back. Let's get a couple new transfers in. I know out there I'm transferring. We have like 3 scholarships open. Let's go. Why can't we win the Big Ten title next year? Huh? If we get the right pieces in. Why can't we compete for a top 5 spot in the conference if Trace comes back? Why not? Why not us?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, also, I also put a poll out to kind of gauge fan interest because I feel like I didn't see a lot of anyone putting out there, hey, what else? How does like the general population feel about a lot of this? And so I put out a couple of, how do you feel about the new coaching hires, plural potentially? And it's like, hey, let's excited. Let's go. I like it, but let's see. I don't really like it, but let's also see, or it's just a terrible hire. 45% excited. Let's go. I love that. Almost half of the people already said excited. Let's go. Let's do it. 44%. I like it, but let's see. So that's already, like, if you would have told me a couple days ago, I use hiring Mike Woodson, I think most people, like 80, 90% would have said, oh, this is probably not going to be a good hire. I'll get with it. I'm a fan. I'm always going to be a fan. Let's do it. I'm going to get excited about it. But initially their thoughts would have been like, probably not. We got already 89%. It's actually going up right now. 89% of already people are really excited. Let's see. Another 9% said, I don't like it, but let's see. So at least they're optimistic. And then about 1.8% is like, this is a terrible hire. It's like, okay, well, hold on a second. But that was, yeah, exactly. So, some of the thoughts that you were just wrapping up there. We talked about, like you said, the players coach and people really buying into that. He is the epitome of that. Getting the NBA success, because that's what college basketball is turning into. How can you get into, and has been also, how can you get me from high school through or to college and then into the NBA? Check mark. How can you have also going back to a tradition of winning basketball? Thad Matta, obviously a big tradition of winning basketball. Check mark, because a lot of people are going to say Mike Woodson, the downside, if you look at his actual winning record. Well, if you also think of the teams that he's been going on, there hasn't been much of a chance for him to actually have.
He's been stuck with the Knicks for a while.
And the Hawks too. And the Hawks, which are 2 teams that most of the last 2 decades have not been very much there. But who is it? I think it was Jason that said, yeah, Knicks fans are brokenhearted that he's leaving. A lot to say about him. And I agree with that. Especially if you're an NBA guy and you're like, hey, I'm sad that my assistant's leaving, you know that he's starting to mean a lot to this program. So obviously there are so many things left to talk about, so many things left to dive into, so many more things to go into. Like, we're going to wait for Scott Dolson's official press conference. We got to see, oh, by the way, it was Logan Dolcom was the first guy out of the rest of them that he said he's coming, he's staying, I guess not coming back, but staying with the program. He's excited about it. He really wants to play for someone like Mike Woodson. So that's the first ball to roll. He already said he's going to talk to some other people. We got to see who else is going to stay with the program. We got to see if Dolson or Woodson or Mata or whoever the combination is, what assistants they're going to hire, if they're going to retain any assistants, because technically those assistants are still on the payroll. and still part of the program. So we're going to see what that tradition is. We're going to see where everything's going. There's a lot to get into. I know there's going to be a lot of podcasts for you as the listeners to listen to over the next couple of days, all of those great podcasts. And we don't want to overload you with 5,000 hours of listening to podcasts. So come back on Tuesday evening once we have some more of this information. I would assume by then Scott Dolson's press conference would come in. We might have a player or two say they're coming or not coming back, basically. So come back with us Tuesday evenings at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. That's when the Hoosier Sound usually goes live. You can follow us at the Hoosier Sound on Twitter. You can go to our affiliate. We're a part of Indiana HQ. Go to indianahq.com. You can find all of that stuff. Subscribe, especially if you're here in the chat. I love looking at all of those YouTube chat guys. Like it's really good to actually have a conversation with you, get some of your thoughts and opinions on this. Hit that subscribe button. But I think that's going to wrap it up for a short but emergency but brief, but let's continue this over the next couple of days. All-inclusive podcast. It was great to be back with everyone. So thank you for joining us, everyone, on our 189th episode of the Hoosier Sound. Take care. Let's go Hoosiers.
Peace and love. Go Hoosiers.